Go Big 12 or go home. I'm Brandon Shanahan, joined as always by broadcasting legend Drew Russell. Drew, it is a tough week for all of America. We're all very cold, but how are you holding up in your neck of the woods?
I'll tell you what, Brandon Shanahan, it was 40 the other day. I went golfing. It was so
Wow.
nice. Everybody said, "Are you crazy?" I said, "This is great weather to go golfing."
I
So
bet you had the whole place yourself too.
it was me and a buddy. There was no one out
Yeah.
there. And it was honestly a spiritual experience. People
Oh man.
say courses are nuts. I'm like, just go play when no one else does. If you can
Yeah.
tolerate below 40, it depends where you're at. Like up north, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin, it hits 40 after a long winter. Course is decently busy. Now, I'm not saying
Yeah.
packed, but there are people out and about. You go more south, and for like Southwest Missouri, yeah, people think you're a psycho if you're playing in 35, 40-degree weather. And I'm not saying that's warm, but to me, it's tolerable. And it was sunny and there was pretty limited wind. Nothing, a couple of ice cold Gatorades can't change. So that's what we'll go with.
Well, and there's also got to be something where, like, if it's empty enough and you're just in constant motion, you're not sitting around waiting for the tee box to clear up. That's a
Right.
huge development. That's a huge perk.
Well, it's like, it's interesting, Brandon, because you look at just how people break down weather. And I'm like, look, if you are just standing around, like, yeah, you are going to get cold. Like, that's guaranteed. But if you're moving and it's like nonstop, it's not too bad if it's 20 plus. Even 10 plus, I could make an argument. It's not too bad. Now, I don't care. If it's negative 10 out and you're moving around, it's just straight up cold.
It's
But,
never going to get pleasant.
right, like, that's just life. But 30 plus, it's really not that bad under most conditions. But again, to each their own. But yeah, for me, I kind of love the cold. I've kind of missed the snow a little bit, so I'm kind of excited to at least get one decent dumping. I crack up. By the way, I gotta ask Brian, have you seen weather Twitter the last few days?
With the exploding trees?
Yeah, exploding trees. That's one part of it. But like just
Oh, yeah,
all these
that's all my Twitter
arguments.
timeline is just Twitter trees or
Oh, is
exploding
that all
trees.
yours is? I've been seeing all these arguments about meteorologists, all that. Maybe I guess those bots, they know what I want to see. But like I was like, it feels like an all-out war almost. Like people are arguing over snowfall totals, arguing over like I've never seen so many projections for a snow than like the last few days. So like I've like Ozarks that I've seen anywhere from 4 to 24 inches.
That's so funny because the first thing that pops in my head is they're really arguing about snow totals. Like meteorology is so hard anyways. And then I think of my Twitter feed and it's all about college football and hypotheticals and according to the performance over expected totals. I'm like, okay, it's the same thing, just different topics. The internet's a crazy place to be. That's the conclusion.
I feel like Brandon, like, because yeah, all my it's been like weather, it's been various. Granted, it knows me too well because yeah, I mean it's all cookies and marketing analytics and
Oh
that
yeah,
stuff.
they know me better than I know myself.
That's true. I mean it's sick. They do that. I get a few tweets from Big Content Guy. Like he
I'm a big
just kind of
content guy.
oh man, I should follow him, but it
Yeah,
just
I
stop.
opened Twitter and this was the very first tweet that pops up.
Exploding trees are insane though.
And I never knew that they were a thing up until like last week.
So I've heard. So when I was a little kid, I was up at my grandparents' farm in Minnesota, and it was like negative 20, 25 one morning, and I remember we heard a couple of pops, and I do kind of remember the concept of like 8, 9 years old of well trees exploding. Yeah, like I remember seeing one in the woods that had actually exploded, but even then, Brandon Shanahan, it just doesn't happen. Yeah, it's a wild concept. Like I'm sure we'll get videos throughout the weekend.
Well, now I don't know. Maybe this is just my algorithm catching up, but I feel like this is a pretty new thing to the internet because it's such a specific part of the country that gets it. It's like real up north of the sappy trees, and And I guess out in the woods, you don't get too much Twitter coverage up there, anyways. But now maybe more. Maybe it's always been like that, and my algorithm just catching up.
It might be, Brandon. I just know that a lot of changes are being made, a lot of uncertainty. But if we're looking at real life, it gives me an opportunity over the weekend to really buckle down and watch some Big 12 hoops, which has been absolutely beyond dynamic the last couple of weeks.
Oh my gosh, it's been such a treat. Arizona, are they a wagon? Are they like have they separated themselves in the class of their own yet, or is that
They're
just
pretty close.
yeah?
I think the only team that I think is in their realm right now is Houston. Houston's still a really freaking good basketball team, just from a standing standpoint. But you just have to give Arizona credit. I mean, they have genuinely dominated, Brandon. I mean, they have. They've really went out. They've taken care of their business. I mean, they're averaging 90 a game, which
That's
is
nuts.
absurd. 90 points a game. And you look at, Koa Pete, Jaden Bradley, that entire roster up and down is good. And it could be any guy on any night that takes over them for them. They're deep, they're balanced. For Coach Tommy Lloyd, I think this is his best Arizona team to date, and they absolutely could potentially make a run in March. That said, we're still 2 months away from the tournament, so there's still a lot to break down. But if you want to look at college basketball teams that have like peaked the first half of the season or have been absolutely put themselves in a contention as a title, potentially even favorite, it's Arizona. I mean, they have just looked. I mean, they've looked great, Brandon. I mean, they really have, and I mean, they have five different guys averaging double figure points. Like that's wild in college basketball. That is not the easiest thing to do.
I mean, when you're putting up
And
90 points a game, it's got to come from somewhere.
right. And look, their Big 12 schedule has not been brutal yet. They've had some easier middle tier, lower tier teams for the most part. They still also have a win against UConn. They do have a win against UCLA. And they are, in general, taking care of teams pretty effectively. But they do have a couple of big ones coming on the future. West Virginia on Saturday at home. And then a big one Monday night. Oh, man, at BYU. That is going to be a treat to watch on Big Monday. And they got big games coming up, especially in February with kind of Kansas twice, Iowa State, Houston, BYU again, Tech. Yeah, like they're about to see the gauntlet in February, but they're absolutely kicking teams' tails the best of their ability. And if they can get through BYU next Monday, good chance they're going to be undefeated going into February.
And last week we had talked quite a bit about because obviously we know that Arizona's good. We know that AJ DeBance is a freak. But the two teams that we were really keeping an eye on, especially with the games that they had, Kansas and Baylor. How do you feel about those two teams today compared to the last time we chatted?
Well, pretty wild how much those trends
Yeah.
differentiated. The last time we chatted, Kansas was an underdog against Iowa State at home, and they went out that night and absolutely kicked Iowa State's teeth in. Then that Friday night, they were kind of able to do their job, Brandon, with um, continuing to win. Kansas is all of a sudden trending on a positive direction, and really the big thing that Kansas has to focus on is going to be Darren Peterson's health. I mean, that's going to be the big thing for them going forward. But they're 13-5 right now. I think that Bidunga is playing better in the post. I think he's progressing at a really nice rate. And they are playing better basketball. There's no other way to put it. Their schedule hasn't been easy, but to go to Colorado and find a way to win there, I don't care. Boulder's usually a tough place to play. They took care of Baylor easily. Rivalry game tomorrow against K-State, but they're definitely trending correctly after a very rocky start to the season. And I do think, too, one of the reasons why they struggled initially in conference play, Darren Peterson had been out a few weeks. I think they did build a certain identity without him. They bring him back in the lineup as talented as he is. Certain things I think, especially on the defensive end, definitely were problems for KU, but they were able to take care of business. And then you go vice versa with Baylor, it's really been a tough season in Big 12 play so far. Now, granted, when you played already TCU, Iowa State, Houston, KU on the road, Tech at home, I mean, you're bound to lose games. That's true. But I think it's the way they're losing games. Losing by 19 at home against Tech. Again, losing at Tech, there's no shame. Losing at home by 20, even against
gotta make it competitive.
against a historically good team in, a good team in Tech, it makes you think. And I'll tell you what, it's been interesting. For the first time in my life, I've seen Baylor fans questioning Scott Drew a little bit. I have seen a little Twitter discourse, which is shocking.
It
And
feels like a crazy world that I just a while ago it was, oh, well, is Kentucky going to come poach him? Is he going to be, a name for some of these major jobs? And Baylor's able to keep him around, and now it's starting to get a little bit warm.
it is. And I think as well, Brandon, again, their schedule's going to slow down. And I'm curious. I mean, their next four, TCU, Colorado, they're going to find out if they've got it in them or not. Cincinnati on the road, which did just beat Iowa State. But again, that's a potentially winnable game. But yeah, I mean, Baylor's tied for last right now in the conference. They're tied with Arizona State, who they're not looking too sharp right now. Bobby Hurley. Utah is obviously in a rebuild mode, and K-State is definitely not a strong team right now. Yeah, it is kind of rather stunning where Baylor is, considering the success they've had in just 5 years ago. I mean, they were a national champion winner, and that was a great team. I mean, that really was with Scott Drew. Scott Drew is an all-time solid coach just because he took over a situation at Baylor that was unthinkable at the time and built it into a respectable program first and then actually a powerhouse for a couple of years. So it is weird to see that discourse, but yeah, it's disappointing. It felt like they quit, I think, during stanzas of the last two games.
Yeah, it does seem like they have a pretty good on ramp to get the train back on the tracks. But if things do go south, there is another coach who coached at Baylor, left Baylor, and won a national championship. Is there any thought that maybe Kim Mulkey could make a trip back to Waco?
Kim Mulkey, I'll tell you, if they've got enough flamboyant outfits for him or ready to go in Waco, you never know. Again, if you're a Baylor fan, don't call for Scott Drew's job, ladies and gentlemen. Like, that's so insane. At least for this year, like, you're bound to have a couple down years, and yeah, they haven't been national title good the last 2 years, but they never were when he got there. The fact that they won a national title in general, Scott Drew, really is a remarkable run. And before Indiana football and Kurt Signetti existed, I could have made a pretty strong argument that is one of the best coaching jobs in college football or just college athletics history in terms of overcoming pretty rough stuff 20 years ago, building a clean program, a honorable program, or clean for the most part. I'm aware this year they've had some stuff with transfers, but I mean, honorable program a lot of people respect historically.
Yeah, an insane thing that we're talking about. I mostly just wanted to bring it up. Just I love talking about Kim Mulkey. Whenever she gets, I get an opportunity to talk about her on the show, I'll bring it up.
And you should. I mean, the woman. I'll tell you what, Kim Mulkey is unlikable enough that when LSU and Iowa played in the national championship game women's basketball a couple of years ago, I for 5 seconds debated, should I consider cheering Iowa? And the fact that she forced me to consider that before I did support LSU tells you everything that you need to know about how I feel about Kim Mulkey.
The only thing I considered is, okay, well, now do I need to invest in a sparkly jacket because of how much I'm in on Kim Mulkey and the LSU Tigers? Do I need to buy an Angel Reese jersey now? Like, that's the only thing I was considering when it comes to them versus the Iowa Hawkeyes. So they're any opportunity to bring up Kim Mulkey, she will always be a hero in my eyes, no matter how not great of a person she is.
Yeah, she's not the best person on the planet, ladies and gentlemen. But that said, yeah, like Brandon Shanahan and I have to respect that she did pull off a very important victory in college basketball history a few years ago to avoid narratives that Brandon and I'm not sure could have lived with for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely. But an interesting week. And oddly enough, so we talk a lot about the teams at the top of the conference and how electric some of those matchups are. Like when we get to see BYU take on Arizona here next week, that's going to be electric. We're going to talk about that in nauseum. A game I do want to point out that was wildly entertaining, just on the absolute other end of the spectrum, Kansas State and Utah. And that game was so fun because both teams kind of, it felt like they knew, like, all right, this is our shot to get one in the win column. And they were both playing like they were playing for the regular season title. I loved it.
I mean, and again, every win matters in the conference. And yeah, like K-State loses that game, they're still winless in the conference. And when you look at their schedule of versus Kansas at West Virginia versus Iowa State at TCU, on paper, that's 4 losses that can add up pretty quick. And to get that victory at home versus a fellow cellar dweller was significant. Got Jerome Tang in the stands and got him all hyped up. But yeah, like Big 12 basketball, even some of the lower level teams still can put out a very entertaining product night in and night out.
So I thought that was fun. I wanted to just highlight that because there's no other reason to talk about Kansas State or Utah when it comes to this Big 12 hoops conversation. Interesting shifts in Iowa State since the last time we talked. We were talking about them kind of being in that same tier, maybe Arizona and Houston, national title good, and then they kind of fell off a cliff there for a while, got blown out against Kansas on the road, tough draw, but then they also had a real tough game against Cincinnati. They bounced back against Central Florida, a 30-point win on Tuesday. What are the vibes and aims today compared to what they were just a week and some change ago?
Yeah, well, I think Iowa State's been living on the edge for a good chunk of the season where they've gotten out to pretty lackluster starts in a lot of first halves of games. Played strong second half, built way too deep of a hole against KU. KU played great basketball that night. That's a wash. It's life. You kind of move on. Yeah, the Cincinnati game definitely was an eyebrow raiser. That's a Cincinnati team on paper that's not spectacular. And even though, Momchilovich was outstanding, nobody else was. And I think more discouraging, getting out rebounded, 12 plus turnovers. Those are the things that are going to hurt teams long term. And I think it did give Iowa State kind of a dose of reality. Like, we got a lot of work to do. And unfortunately, TJ's teams have, for certain teams, gotten to terrific starts to the season. And then they've kind of faded down the stretch to the point that you feel like they underperform a little bit during the Big 12 conference tournament and then the NCAA tournament too. I am curious that there will be a coaching shift a little bit of TJ because traditionally they play hard every single day. They work hard in practice, which is great, but like they will do full heavy physical drills. Legs matter in the Big 12. And when you have as many conference games as you do, making sure you're fresh night in and night out is important. And you do want fresh legs or fresh enough legs for March. So I am curious if there'll be an adjustment on that end.
How much of BYU's success is just AJ Dubance being a freak?
Well, BYU, it's funny because AJ gets the rightful attention, Brandon. Like, he absolutely deserves all the love that he gets. The thing is, though, they've still got a couple of, pretty solid players alongside, too. When you just look at everything, Richie Saunders is a good guard. I mean, he's averaging, was he at 19 a game? Like, Saunders is good. Robert Wright, the third. He's a solid player. He's averaging double figures. I think he's up like 15, 60, if not more. So having those guys, I think, is important. Davis Jr. is a guy that's just a good glue guy. Kata's a good forward that's going to be able to rebound the basketball. I think my big fear for BYU, what does that bench situation look like as they dig deeper in the season and NCAA tournament time? Dubance is going to be fine. I think Dubance, Saunders, and Wright the third, you have 3 truly qualified scorers that are going to give near any defense a headache night in and night out, and they would be extremely tough to prep for, especially if you only have a day or two in the NCAA tournament. But at the same time, Brandon, yeah, that depth is worrisome. But if you're a BYU fan, this is the funnest team you've seen maybe ever in terms of just sheer entertainment. This is the most invested I've ever been in a BYU team. They're fun. They play with a certain confidence. I thought when Mark Pope left for Kentucky a couple of years ago, yeah, I was concerned, no question about it. I thought, man, to lose kind of a talent like that is bad, but they've rebuilt. I can make a strong argument. They're more fun to watch than even the Pope era. And I think that's great for BYU. And BYU's been, I think, one of the biggest beneficiaries, maybe the biggest, of growing their basketball program by moving to the Big 12 conference. I really believe that. Houston's grown a lot, but Houston was already kind of a pretty established brand already, even in the American. BYU, I think, was kind of suffering a little bit in the West Coast Conference, and they come here, and I mean, I think it forced them to level up and put out a good product, and to their credit, they've been able to do so.
Well, and that's it. I'm glad that you brought up Mark Pope, because that's exactly why I brought up BYU. And now, of course, when you get a generational kind of talent, that can elevate the program way above coaching, no matter who's at the head of the bench. But we talk a lot about coaches leaving good jobs that they've established and built in their own image, then to leave for that blue blood job like Kentucky, or we see it in college football all the time. Kalen DeBoer leaving Washington for Alabama and whatnot. If you're a BYU fan, do you feel better about the Cougars today than the Kentucky Wildcats do about Mark Pope?
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at let's look at day and time right now, absolutely. We're all prisoners of the moment. And if you're a Kentucky fan right now, you're probably not as ecstatic of where you're at with your basketball program compared to if they did. I mean, they're playing better in SEC play, but yeah, I think for a BYU fan, things played out probably as well as you could ask for, considering Mark Pope was rightfully viewed as a rising coach in the industry. I'm not sure if it was Kentucky's first pick, but also he was a great player for Kentucky back in the day. He truly loves the program. The hire made sense on Kentucky's side. But yeah, if you're a prisoner of the moment, yeah, you're a BYU fan, you're happier right now. I think you're happier than a Kentucky fan. Can that change when we have this conversation this time next year? Of course it can. But yeah, as of right now, BYU fans, I think, are probably pleased as peach of where they're
at. And I just out of curiosity, sprinkling Coach Calipari in that conversation, both all in their, I think, what is this, their second year at their stops now. Yep. How do Arkansas fans feel about Coach Cal's first year and a half?
I think in general, okay, I mean, they got out to a terrible start in conference play last year, to the point there were questions they're going to make the NCAA tournament, and give them credit. They readjusted, made the tourney, and were able to make the Sweet 16, beat St. John's in the second round. If Calipari, and we won't dig too much into SEC basketball, but I'll just say this. Arkansas fans, there are expectations to win. There are. I mean, I crack up. I had a few Arkansas fans the other day tell me, they're like, Musselman didn't do a lot for the program. And I'm like, guy took us to 2 Elite Eights.
Yeah.
I get we fell short of a national championship or a Final Four, but Musselman genuinely did provide some pretty good teams in Fayetteville, and he won a lot in the NCAA tournament. I mean, they took out Gonzaga and Chet Holmgren. Give them credit where it's due. That said, with Cal, yeah, there's expectations to win. There's expectations to win games in the NCAA tournament, but it's not the end of everything if it doesn't happen. Kentucky, it just genuinely feels like it's end all be all. You can't win. This is too historic of a brand. You can't lose here. And I think Cal, after all those years, and maybe they were underperforming a little bit, I think it worked out that both sides need a different change. But even then, Cal, I'm sure, isn't feeling near the stress at Arkansas that he did, especially those Final 4 years in Big Blue Nation.
Big weekend this week. Obviously, a full slate of games tomorrow. West Virginia taking on Arizona, Houston, Texas Tech, Colorado hosting UCF, Iowa State on the road at Oklahoma, the holy war with BYU and Utah. That's always a gritty game. BYU and Texas and the rivalry, Kansas State, Cincinnati, Arizona State. So what are some of the games that you're looking out for, and what do you think will be taken away from this weekend?
Boy, yeah, these are some great games, Brandon. And I mean, we could go game by game if we wanted to, but I think games that initially stand out to me personally. I mean, Houston Tech is clearly your number one game that you're fascinated by. This is a significant challenge for Houston, one of the remaining two undefeateds in conference play, along with Arizona. They go into Lubbock and they win on ESPN. They're sending quite a message to the rest of the conference, but also the rest of the nation. Yeah, we're back and we're as good as we ever have been before. I also think another game that really is semi-intriguing to me, TCU Baylor's fascinating, weirdly to me, just because Baylor, do they stop this slide? Can they find a way to rebound? TCU is a program that has a lot of, I think, good vibes with it right now. An underrated little game. It's on ESPN Plus, hidden away, but UCF Colorado, I actually am kind of interested by. UCF, I watched the other night. Iowa State took care of them relatively cleanly, but at the same time, I really like some of the concept I saw from Coach Dawkins' team. And they've had, I think, a really good fight and spirit to them throughout the year. Like, I've really enjoyed watching them play. They beat KU earlier in conference play. I think they are, at least for now, playing in a positive scenario. I'm just curious how that will pan out. So I think those are kind of the three. Also, keep an eye on Cincinnati, Arizona State just a little bit too, just because Arizona State, boy, it just feels like the Hurley era is, he did some positive things, especially early in his tenure. Could there be a potential transition come later on in the season? That remains to be seen, but just feels like they need to win that game at home against Cincinnati.
That's where I was going as well, especially with the later tip-off game. I think those are a nice way to wrap up a full slate of college hoops. Just a handful of teams that have outstanding records at home. Oklahoma State, one of them. Is this a tricky spot for Iowa State as they're still trying to get back on track after going 1-2 the last three games?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Oklahoma State the last few years, Brandon, has definitely not been a team that I think teams have been afraid to play for the most part. Stillwater at one time, Brandon, back in the 80s, 90s, and thousands under the direction of Coach Eddie Sutton, was a nightmare to play. Gallagher-Iba Arena, it gets loud when they fill it up, like really loud in that gym, and teams struggled to play there for a long time. I do think that they are trending also in the correct direction overall, and that's scary, I think, for the rest of the Big 12. Yeah, it's going to be a fight to me for Iowa State hoops. I think that's going to be something that scares me a little bit, especially Oklahoma State. They're 2-4 in conference play, but they're 2-1 at home in conference, and I think they're a team that definitely has been a problem. They defeat K-State. They took out UCF. A very winnable game, in my opinion, for Oklahoma State. Can Iowa State just be resilient? They get a win. They got to be feeling good going back to Ames.
I think if you just looked on paper, you look at BYU and Utah, and you think, okay, well, BYU's a wagon. Utah, very stinky. But obviously, the rivalry aspects, Utah is certainly going to get up for this game. And then you also have BYU with the matchup against number one Arizona coming out of the weekend on Monday night. Is there something there, or am I grasping at straws and thinking that could be something to keep an eye out on?
Yeah, I think no, I think it's something to keep an eye out for. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Like, I mean, you break it down for me first.
Well, I mean, just from a optic standpoint and just the flow of sports, it does seem kind of like a troubling spot for BYU to be in. And I mean, I never to say like BYU is going to ever overlook Utah. They know how much that game means, and especially the struggling Utah team this year. And then you also have that look ahead spot. Like you're gonna have that huge national spotlight, one of the best games that of in the regular season up until this point in the entire country, and in that Arizona game. Just, I mean, not looking at the X and O's and
Mhm.
the freaks that a BYU have. Um, it feels like it could be a trouble spot, like just
Yeah,
on that witchy side of college basketball Twitter.
I can see that too. I think Utah. I think. I mean, clearly BYU is a better team. No one's going to debate that. Even Utah fans. I would like to think though that there's still enough juice in that rivalry game that I don't think they're remote. Like, I mean, they know if they lose to Utah, they know how much it means that fan base to make sure they're taking care and beating their in-state rival. So that's an important game for BYU just from that standpoint. I don't think they're going to overlook them at all, and especially coming off of a loss as well. I think that's helpful. I think if they're on that long winning streak, it's easy to overlook. Coming off of a loss, of course, you're in life. Everybody's going to take their L's in life. I've taken plenty of fat L's myself. But when you take an L, you reevaluate. Sometimes you're like, hey, it just didn't work. Go back out, try to execute the game plan again. But sometimes you take certain L's, you're like, we just need to reevaluate everything. I think it's one of those things that most of the stuff they're doing has been correct this season. I don't think they're going to change too much, but sure they're going to reevaluate and putting together more high intense energy, especially on the defensive end after giving up 84.
Well, crazy weekend in Big 12 hoops. What are you looking forward to the most?
Oh, I mean, it's just great. Tomorrow is exciting for me because we got snow. So, and all my games I was supposed to broadcast have been canceled. So I am genuinely excited to just sit in my couch, get a blanket on, have a book on the side, and just watch some of these games. And I'm excited too. I think just to see Arizona, can they continue to play well? I'm curious how West Virginia will play on the road. That's a team we really didn't talk about in our spiel today. But West Virginia's 4-2 in Big 12 conference play. 13-6 overall. It feels like they're moving in the right direction. And obviously it's hilarious with Coach DeVries leaving after 1 year that might have worked out okay for West Virginia in the end. That remains to be seen. Seeing how teams can trend. So I'm curious how Arizona will look. So I'm really excited about that. Impossible not to be excited about Houston, Texas Tech too. That's just such a great basketball game. And I'll say it over and over. When it's full, United Supermarkets Arena in Lubbock, that's a top 10 arena in the country when it's full. It's really a madhouse. Like they go nuts there. So should be a fun one.
Ooh, last thing I wanted to just get your thoughts on the switching over to college football. The Big 12 schedule has been released for the 2026 season. It seems pretty straightforward. It doesn't seem like there's anybody who's really got a crazy bad draw or crazy um, easy path to Arlington. Did you have any crazy thoughts on the schedule and that coming out?
Yeah, not off the top of my head. I think you look at how everything breaks down. I think if you're looking at Texas Tech, they're probably going to be pretty pleased in general of how their schedule breaks down. Not exactly devastating. There's some key games on there. I mean, Arizona State is definitely one they'll keep an eye on. Arizona, even they're somebody who's trending in the correct direction. I think the big difference is, and just because of how the schedule played out this year, less bye weeks. Her team usually only had the one bye week, but few teams in the Big 12 had like two bye weeks this year just because of the week 0 and then kind of the longer regular season too. That's not going to be the case this year. Like each team, based off of my naked eye, will all be one bye week. And unlike this past season where we had teams having bye weeks in November, not going to be really happening this time, Brandon. Last 4 weeks, everybody's slated against one another, which makes for some really fun football that final month of the season. But in general, I think teams are going to be pleased overall. But yeah, it's pretty insane that pretty much for bye weeks, nearly everybody is going to have just pretty much one outside of TCU will have a couple because they're playing overseas on week 0. But outside of them, Brandon, Everybody else got one.
Yeah, and interesting whether that fell, especially for a team like Kansas, who goes to London to play Arizona State in week 3. They get the rest week after that, and then 9 straight games to wrap up their season. That stretch, of course, including Kansas State, Utah, BYU. And we talked about Kansas and how kind of that momentum for Coach Leipold is coming to, it's getting pretty dry. And that's not exactly a favorable thing to wrap up the season with. And can they, find some momentum? No more Jalen Daniels. So is it time to put up or shut it for Kansas?
It sure feels like it. And rivalry games mean something, Brandon. That week 2 game against Mizzou is a big one for KU because they absolutely had a pretty good chance, in my opinion, Columbia last year to win. Mizzou was the better team, but KU had such an explosive start only to fade down the stretch and not find a way to victory. That week 2 game, especially in a renovated stadium in Lawrence, they've got to find a way to win that game. I do feel like if they don't, it could really torpedo the season. Does that put Leipold's job in jeopardy? I don't personally think so because KU football historically hasn't been great. So they're going to give a little more freedom to coaches. But boy, you need week 2 against Mizzou. You win that game, boy, fans are, even if you don't have a great season, fans are a lot friendlier to a coach when they beat a hated rival.
That's true. But then on the flippity flop, of course, Missouri's a formidable team. Arizona is going to be, I think, a step better than they were this year. And then so you go into that 9-game stretch, 1-2, with a couple of heavy hitters and a rivalry game sprinkled in. It could be a real setback year.
Yeah, also, it could be, no doubt. And again, for KU too, again, not beating K-State for 15 years.
Yeah,
that game's going to be important this year. I mean, that feels, even on the road, it feels like you got to find a way to win that game. So I think that will be kind of rather interesting to me overall. I'm also kind of fascinated by a couple of road games week 1. Oklahoma State going to Tulsa is a fascinating little week 1 game, just because that was a game that was the final straw for Gundy last year. How will they look on the road? And then CU going to Georgia Tech, that's a very difficult week 1. And Baylor, I could make a pretty strong argument it's a road game as well, playing in Atlanta against Auburn. So, I mean, can they find a way to take care of their business? And then a lot of non-con games week 2, a lot of tough road tests out of the conference when you look at Arizona State being on the road at A&M, Iowa State's in Iowa City. UCF's playing Pitt, which is a very funky little non-con game there. Good games ahead. It'll be interesting to see how all of it pans out. And maybe the most depressing thing, West Virginia and Pitt not playing each other this year. I'd need the backyard draw. Yeah, it stinks. Stinks, ladies and gentlemen.
And especially last year, because it felt like that was a big, feather in the cap of what turned into a pretty rough season for West Virginia and Rich Rod. For them to pick up that win that they won't have the opportunity for this year, tough draw.
It is. And West Virginia, going back again to that point I just made a couple minutes ago, Kansas, beating a rival really is going to soften your fan base initially. Mm-hmm. West Virginia, though, still has an interesting game against a good Virginia team in Charlotte. That'll be a fascinating neutral site game. And they do have some home contest with some interesting home games, Okie State, Arizona. Their road schedule's brutal, Brandon. West Virginia got a tough road schedule in conference. At Iowa State, which that's going to be their easiest game, then at TCU, at Texas Tech, at Utah. Those final 3 are brutal. And I don't know where Iowa State's going to be, but I guarantee TCU, Texas Tech, and Utah will be all pretty quality in 2026, or I feel comfortable saying that. How do they do on the road? And then can they find a way to win those home games and take care of their business? And maybe that Houston Week 12 game is going to be a pretty good litmus test of where are they at in year 2. That'd be towards the end of the season. Can they find a way home again, win at home against a Houston team that's definitely on the rise again? That should be an interesting game.
And last bit of college football news to clear up. Officially back to a 12-team college football bracket this year. Just a couple of goalpost moving changes, including the verbiage in who gets the automatic qualifiers. Was the top 5 highest ranked conference champions, which of course in design is okay. We have your 4 conference power teams, then you have the best group of 5 teams. They cleared up that verbiage to avoid the disaster that was a James Madison team who went 12-1 to make the college football playoff this year. They changed it so it's automatic bids to each of the Power 4 champions, regardless of ranking, and then the highest ranked group of 5 team. And then Notre Dame gets an automatic bid if they're in the top 12 as well, which it drives me crazy because the people who are upset about James Madison, sure. All right, whatever. You live in a different world and you must not like college football as much as I do, but whatever. But that's not a college football playoff issue. The James Madison issue is an ACC issue of not having easy, fair tiebreakers where your best teams make the conference tournament or conference championship game.
Yeah.
And so this year it would have included a Duke team in this college football playoff, and I'd much rather have now. Granted, they're also changing their tiebreaker, so that's not going to happen again. But so it felt like the problem was solved to me, and all of a sudden the college football playoff has to go and move the goalpost again because they didn't like the results of the system they created.
Yeah, a lot of jockeying, and you know what? I'll start with wins. I'm just thankful it's staying at 12. There was definitely those rumors of the 18-24. And it was initially surprising, maybe not so much, of Greg Zank in the SEC joining pretty much every other conference saying we don't want expansion as of right now. That was really a Big Ten narrative that they wanted the expansion. SEC said they were against it. And for me, I think it does produce a more quality product that, yes, we have more teams with an opportunity to go win it, but regular season still has to matter in some form or fashion. It just feels like more teams continues to water it down. That's my big complaint with NCAA tournament. Should they, expand eventually? Don't water down your regular season. Like, those games matter. People pay heavy money to go to those games. Make them matter a little bit. So I'll start with the positive, Brandon. Like, that's the positive. But you're right. The moving the field goal post obviously is no good. You don't want to necessarily do that. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, this is the rules that have been put together. And, if you're a smaller school, it's tough because unlike the NCAA tournament where you just feel like a guy, one guy can just go off one night and find a way to beat a big power team, much harder in college football. And whether it's fair or not, like, this is how it is. And when the big boys run the show, Brandon, the big boys are going to get what they want to get.
Yeah. I will say I am happy that it's staying at 12 teams. Just in the sense, I think that there's a way to, like, I don't hate the thought of a 2014 playoff, like the way that the FCS does it. Because we'll pull up what that would have looked like this year. Because to your point, I don't want to water down the regular season at all. So you have to create it in a way that rewards regular season excellence. And the way that the FCS does it kind of does that, where the top, 8 seeds get a first round bye.
Yeah,
that helps. Winning your conference puts you into that group. That matters. And then it also fills in a gap a little bit of, and you can also tweak this without expanding the playoff. But the biggest complaint that I saw unanimously was just the amount of time between the end of the regular season in November to the college football playoff national championship just getting underway next week or last week. And next year is going to be even worse. It's going to be even later in the year. So this at least would kind of fill that match and give you more games and still reward regular season excellence. Again, you can do this because what I was absolutely afraid of and what would make me visibly ill is a 16-team playoff with no buys.
Yes.
Because then it's like, okay, well, does being the 1 seed really matter that much?
Yeah.
As opposed to being the 8 seed or
Yeah.
the 6th or the 7th seed, like that, then it feels like you're really watering down a lot of college football. Like at least in the 24 team playoff, as the way the FCS does it, it does still reward excellence, and
Yeah.
Indiana still has a reason to go out and kick the teeth out of Purdue in week 12 or week 13, because they still have something to play for. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. And I've said this: the my perfect playoff scenario is almost what it was exactly last year,
Yeah.
except you reseed after every round. 12 teams, top 5 power or top 5 conference champions, top 4 get a bye. I
Yeah.
love the thought of conference championship games mattering more than they did. Now, granted,
Yeah.
this year they were all kind of bangers, so Ohio State, Indiana mattered way more than I thought it would, than I think it could in the future. But that's what I'm afraid of. I love conference championship games. I think that's the best way to make
Yeah.
conference championships matter. Have enough teams in where it doesn't feel like there's a true national title contender that gets left out. And then you also kind of account for those years where maybe you don't have that many good teams and
Yeah.
who can compete for national championship. This year, not one of those years, but it felt like last year I was like, okay, well, we know who the top 4 teams are, and we know kind of how this is going to shake up for the most part.
I couldn't put it better, Brandon. I pretty much were on the same page across that entire points. And just to piggyback a little bit off the date stuff, they've got to find a way to shorten this thing up and tidy it up. When you look at next year's schedule, just quickly, very similar to this year's schedule, where you have first round games mid late December, the 18th, 19th, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, quarterfinals games. I still think they got to continue that to kind of an extent, or just put both semifinal games on New Year's Day. That might be the better route going
I think you
forward.
got to get to the semis by New Year's Day. I
I
think
think
that's
so
what you gotta
too.
build around.
Because I have no problem semis or New Year's Day. Like, I think that's like two
Yeah,
great games to look forward to. I think that's phenomenal. Your semis are Jan 7, Jan 8, but as you said, national championship game January 25th next year. And that to me is absurd. That is such a long wait. I mean, they're going to have to wait 17 to 18 days between games. Now, old BCS system, yes, you found out your game, early December, and you did have a month to prepare. But the difference was it was a full month. Like, it was one game
yeah.
for a full month. You're dragging out a playoff process that's going to take, in the end, over a month, which that's a while. Like, that does take time. Now, granted, an expanded system, that's bound to happen, but when you start the season late August and it goes all the way to late January, that's a run. That's a marathon for a football player, let alone a college football player. So I don't know. We'll see how that all breaks down in the future. I'm just happy they kept it at 12. I'll call the wins, and then you and I can complain about it throughout the summer, and I'm sure when the rankings come out next year.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. We'll have plenty to complain about, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
We
But
love to complain, ladies and gentlemen.
that's what we're here for. That's what the
Yeah.
whole show was about. But not a lot to complain about. Big 12 hoops got a great day coming up tomorrow. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom before we wrap up for another week and go Big 12
Yeah,
hoops?
I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, you just go out, you keep putting together a strong year. It's been a wild 2026, from a national standpoint, wild stuff across the board. Personal standpoint, big shout out to my guy, Brandon Shanahan, ladies and gentlemen, getting a great job in Nebraska. Terrific broadcaster. The Nebraska kid coming home. It's quite a little story. So just a big shout out to Brandon Shanahan for going to be showing the people in Nebraska just how freaking good he is. So, Nebraska's lucky to have Brandon Shanahan. And that was a terrible rant, but that's all I got today, Brandon.